Hey guys, tonight we're heading deep into the tangled forests of ancient Greece, where the trees murmur secrets, the moonlight creeps like a nervous cat, and the gods are always a little too dramatic for their own good. There's moss on your boots, mist in the air, and somewhere ahead, a very bad decision is about to happen. One that ends in antlers, slowly. You walk a little farther than you should. The woods don't quite feel real anymore. There's a stillness here like the forest is listening to you breathe. A breeze rustles overhead, but the leaves don't move. You pass a vine curtain that no one planted, and the temperature drops just enough to make you feel like someone, or something, just noticed you. You probably won't survive this walk, to be honest. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from and what time is it right now? Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step deeper into the grove. There's something about the light here, it doesn't shine, it glows. Everything feels quieter, like the forest is holding its breath. Even your own footsteps seem muted, swallowed by the moss underfoot. You duck under a bent tree branch and emerge into a clearing that is wrong. Not bad, just too perfect. The pool in the center gleams like polished glass. The rocks are smooth, arranged too artfully to be natural. And the birds gone. Not a chirp, not a flutter. The only sound is the gentle ripple of water and your own heart. There are rules and myths, even boring ones, especially boring ones. And the first rule of divine bathing spots: don't walk in. Unfortunately, you didn't get the memo. The hunter ahead, Actaeon, did neither. He's young, handsome, overly confident, and has just done the one thing you really shouldn't do in a sacred grove: stumbled across a goddess mid-bath. He doesn't even mean to. Maybe he's just following a deer. Maybe the dogs got ahead of him. Maybe he was warned but thought, what's the worst that could happen? Here's a hint, antlers. There in the water she stands, Artemis, goddess of the hunt, and moonlight, and animals, and also incredibly bad moods. She looks up. Time freezes. Not figuratively, literally. The trees stop swaying. The water halts mid-ripple. Even the air seems to hesitate, as if unsure whether to flee or bow. Your instincts kick in. You try to back away, but you're not fast enough. You're not even moving. Because Artemis isn't just staring, she's deciding. And when a Greek goddess decides something, you don't really get to argue. Historians still argue whether Artemis was truly as vengeful as later poets made her out to be, or if her myths were twisted by generations of storytellers who needed someone to balance out Apollo's relentless sunshine. Some think the original myth was a warning tale for hunters who crossed into women's sacred spaces. Others say it's just an ancient metaphor for trespassing on the divine. But either way, here you are, in a forest clearing where a goddess is about to turn someone into something else. And she does it slowly. This isn't a thunderbolt to the face moment. There's no dramatic kaboom. Artemis doesn't scream. She doesn't need to. She lifts one hand. No weapon, no bow. Just her palm. And a whisper. And suddenly your skin prickles. You aren't even sure who's changing. Is it you, Actaeon? Are you becoming Actaeon? The myth doesn't clarify, but your body feels strange. Your scalp tingles. You lift your hand to scratch and it hits something. Something hard. You reach up again, slower this time, and touch a rough, bony edge just above your hairline. It curves upward. Another mirrors it on the opposite side. Antlers. They're growing out of your skull like branches reaching for light. You stagger backward, breath catching, and that's when you feel your spine begin to shift. Not in a painful way, this isn't horror. It's just inconvenient. Bones lengthen. Muscles tighten. Your vision tilts. The goddess is already gone. The water still, but her spell clings to you like fog. You fall forward onto all fours, not because you tripped, but because your legs are now designed that ways. Your fingers split hard and curl under. Hooves. Good for running, bad for writing letters. The transformation is slow, purposeful. Artemis isn't just punishing you. She's sculpting you into something else. A deer. A stag to be precise, majestic, fast, horned like the moon she wears on her brow. The forest welcomes you now, but not kindly. You're part of it. You belong here, sure, but not as a hunter anymore, as prey. And far away, echoing through the trees, you hear the first bark. Your own dogs. They don't know you. Yet. You try to call out, but your mouth no longer remembers how. The tongue's there, but it's wrong. Too thick, too far back. The air escapes as a huff, a grunt, maybe a snort, and that alone startles the birds from the trees. Which is impressive considering there haven't been birds here for hours. You stagger sideways on your new legs. They bend funny, like stilts made by someone who's only read about legs in a dusty scroll. You take one trembling step, then two. It's awkward, jerky. You look like a fawn doing improv on ice. The forest doesn't laugh, but if it could, it would. Because that's the worst part, isn't it? Not just the change, but the way it feels earned. You know what you saw. You know what you shouldn't have seen. Even if it was accidental, even if you had no idea the goddess Artemis was taking her moonlit bath just beyond those innocent-looking olive trees. Still, you saw her. And in myth, even the idea of trespass is enough to earn you hooves. Actaeon, your name now, or at least the name that's been grafted onto this leafy nightmare, was a hunter. A good one? Known throughout Thebes for his aim, his dogs, his charming ability to walk through brush without sounding like a winded donkey. A noble lineage, a promising future, and one incredibly ill-timed stroll. And now you're a deer. Your ears twitch involuntarily. They're larger, now sharper. You hear everything. The rustling of leaves, the chitter of mice, the soft buzz of bees making executive decisions. And far away, that bark again, your dogs, your loyal, well-trained, tail-wagging companions, the ones who've slept by your fire and licked your face and fetched your arrows. They're coming! You take another step, then burst into a run. Because instinct doesn't wait for logic. Historians still argue whether the dogs recognized him or if they simply followed the scent of something unfamiliar and delicious. Some versions of the story say they paused, confused, tails stiff, and eyes wide as if sensing something not quite right. Others say they didn't hesitate, just followed their noses. Their job. You weave through thickets now, every branch a whip, every root a trap. Your new body moves smoother with every bound. Your front legs tuck, your hind legs launch, and suddenly you're not stumbling, you're flying. Not metaphorically. You leap over fallen logs like they're low walls, your muscles stretching into this new form like they've been waiting for it all along, which is deeply unsettling. Somewhere in the distance, a stream gurgles. You veer toward it instinctively, not because you're thirsty, but because it's safety. Water confuses scent. That much you remember from your other life when you were the one chasing, not fleeing. You crash through it. Cold water soaking your fur, yes, fur now, and drenching your underbelly. You don't pause to savor, you keep moving. Every sound behind you could be the first bark, but it isn't, not yet. The trees here are thicker. Pines now, the underbrush is gentler, and you pause briefly in a clearing just large enough for moonlight to find you. You pant steam rising from your flanks. Your antlers brush against a low-hanging branch, scattering needles like dust. You breathe, in, out, but you don't calm, because in your mind something is splintering. Your memories. Your human memories are already blurring at the edges. You can still picture your hands, your bow, the color of your favorite tunic. But they feel distant, fragile, like drawings left out in the rain. And this body, this sleek, shivering, leaf-stained body feels too present. You shudder, not from cold, from the quiet horror of becoming something else. Slowly, thoroughly. You've read enough myths to know gods rarely undo their work, especially Artemis, goddess of the hunt, goddess of untouched things, goddess of celestial punishment that arrives not with thunder but with silence and transformation. She didn't shout. She didn't chase. She simply changed you. A fringe myth says that Artemis only turned Actaeon into a stag because she couldn't bear to kill him herself, that her power lies in distance and detachment, and that watching was enough. Whether that's romantic or cruel depends entirely on how fast your legs are. And right now, they need to be faster. A branch cracks behind you. Not loud, not close, but intentional. The dogs have caught your trail. Your breath catches. You start running again, not leaping now, but sprinting. Hard, uneven hoofbeats on dry pine needles. Every tree becomes a blur. Every shadow looks like a spear. You think of names. You try to remember them. Your dogs, they had names. One started with a P, something noble, proud. Another liked chasing squirrels. One was old. Another had a crooked ear from a fight with a boar. You trained them all, fed them, called them good boys. They're going to kill you. You don't blame them. They don't know. You crash through a grove of cypress, startling a cluster of drowsy birds. They scatter overhead in a mad whir of wings and squawks, then vanish like breath on a mirror. The moon is higher now, bright, almost theatrical. You glance up, and for the briefest moment you think you see her Artemis standing on a branch, impossibly high, arms crossed, eyes unreadable. You stumble, because it's not just your dogs chasing you. It's her, still watching. Your hooves hit the ground harder now, not just from panic, but from weight. A strange creeping density is sinking into your limbs, muscles, thickening joints, adapting, lungs stretching to accommodate this new gait. You feel like a puppet whose strings were rewired mid-show. And Artemis, you suspect, is still backstage sipping moonlight and waiting for the third act. You don't stop. Not yet. Behind you, the barking grows louder, not frenzied, focused. They're gaining. You vault over a fallen log land and a scatter of damp leaves and keep running. Your flank brushes a thorn bush, but you hardly feel it. Your senses are tuned to one thing now: escape. But here's the problem with becoming a deer. You think like one. Every heartbeat turns primal. Every instinct centers around survival. Your mind, still yours, mostly fights to hold on to language, reason, identity, but your body, it's obeying different rules. Older rules. The kind etched into bone. A sudden scent on the wind. A hot canine smell tightens your breath. Your dogs. They're close enough now that you can smell their excitement. It's not cruelty. It's not malice. It's memory. They remember you only as prey. You charge forward, each stride more confident, more automatic. You know this forest once as a hunter, now as quarry, a loop, a lesson. Artemis didn't just turn you into a deer. She turned you into the perfect deer. Majestic, alert, beautiful in that tragic, poetic sort of way. Probably looks amazing carved into a temple wall. Not so great when your legs are jelly and your life depends on outrunning your own pets. Historians still argue whether the story of Actaeon was ever meant to be literal. Some say it's a parable about losing your identity to desire. Others claim it's just a hunter's cautionary tale, a whispered bedtime threat to keep eager boys from peeking where they shouldn't. But there's one lesser-known fragment, possibly an Orphic twist, where the transformation is described as a kind of enlightenment, where Actaeon doesn't resist becoming the deer but welcomes it. This is not that version. You want your hands back. You want to shout your name to your dogs to make them understand, to see that glimmer of hesitation in their eyes. But all you can do is pant and run and hope they remember something of you besides your scent. Ahead, a break in the trees. You veer, right heart jackhammering, and spot a half-frozen creek slicing through the underbrush. You hesitate just long enough to choose the right rock to jump from, then sail over it with a grace you did not earn. Behind you, splashes. They're still with you. And they're not alone now. Another shadow joins the chase. No bark, no growl. Just presence. You risk a glance. And there she is, Artemis. Not looming above this time, but here. Running alongside you through the trees, her tunic floating like mist, her feet barely touching the ground. She doesn't say anything. She doesn't raise her bow. She just watches. Her silver circlet glows softly under the trees, and her gaze flicks between you and the hounds behind you like a conductor monitoring a symphony. You hate how silent she is. You want her to explain. You want her to stop this. But Artemis doesn't stop things. She lets them. You trip slightly on her root. It twists your front leg, but you recover fast, too fast. The deer in you is learning, adjusting, getting faster, which in a way is worse. Because the more deer you become, the more human you leave behind. You crash into a narrow ravine lined with pale stones and echoing frogs. You leap from one ridge to the next, barely scraping the edge. A near miss, another bark, this time close enough to feel. You snort, stumble, recover. Then for a flickering moment you feel it, not just fear, but flight. The kind poets talk about. That gliding sun through leaves, freedom. You're faster than you've ever been. Your body sings with motion. The pain fades. The panic recedes. You are beautiful, and you are doomed. Because even now they are right behind you. Your dogs, those good faithful creatures, don't see their master anymore. They see what Artemis wants them to see. A prize. You can almost hear her whisper somewhere in the wind, "Let them finish it." But she doesn't shout, she never shouts. Your stride slows. You didn't mean it to. But your legs tremble, the trees blur. You're running on memory now. You crash into a shallow clearing where the moonlight lands like spilled milk. And in that light you stop. Not because you want to, because the story demands it. This is the place, the end of the chase. The part every version of the myth agrees on, even if they disagree on everything else. This is where it happens. The dogs arrive. 7 of them. Maybe 9. Maybe 12 if you count the fast ones at the rear. Their ears flick. Their tails stiffen. One of them whines. Maybe it remembers. Maybe it sees your eyes. But then the spell does what it always does. And they don't hesitate. You brace for the teeth, for the snarls, for the blur of fur and betrayal, but they don't leap right away. Not yet. For one suspended moment, your dogs surround you in a circle of confusion. They sniff, they pace. One tilts its head. Another wags its tail just once, almost like a question. You try to meet their gaze. Please. You want to say their names, to say yours, to explain the mess you've become, the trap you've fallen into, the goddess who's watching from the trees like a moody stage manager. But your tongue is still wrong. Your jaw too long. Your breath too shallow. You make a sound. A half snort, half sigh. Maybe a whimper. They freeze. Then one barks, and the others join. The clearing erupts. The lead dog lunges. You leap backward, your antlers brushing a tree trunk. 2 others dart in from your flanks. Their paws are light but deadly. They don't growl. They don't need to. The pack knows its rhythm, its purpose. This is the moment they've been trained for their entire lives. By you. Well, former you. The irony's not lost here. Your legs react before your brain catches up. You pivot, hooves thudding against the leaf-packed earth, and run. Again, always running. It's your new default setting. Behind you, the dogs howl. Their barks ricochet through the woods like wild applause. They're not just chasing anymore. They're closing in. The trees blur. Branches whip your face. Your side aches. A rock scrapes your thigh, but your body doesn't stop. It doesn't even flinch. Every part of you is designed now for evasion, for survival, for not getting caught by the very jaws you once trusted to guard your fire at night. And still there's Artemis. She walks above it all. Or floats. Or maybe just is. You see glimpses of her between the trees, her silver eyes, her folded arms, her complete devastating calm. She doesn't look proud. She doesn't look angry. She just looks like someone ensuring that her rules are enforced. One dog nips at your heel. You kick, not out of aggression, but reflex. You don't want to hurt them. You know them, but they don't know you. Not anymore. One bite lands a shallow tear at your flank. You stumble, catch yourself, and push on. The world becomes a loop of fear trees and snapping jaws. You cross a stream, a hill, a thicket that tears fur from your shoulder. And with every stride, your thoughts dim just a little more. You forget what your hands looked like. You forget the name of your favorite cloak. You forget whether you used to like honey or wine. Because Artemis's spell isn't just about form, it's about identity. She could have killed you instantly. An arrow to the heart, a quick end, a bloodless myth. But that's not what she chose. She chose slow. And not just slow in body, but slow in loss. Historians still argue whether Artemis's method was vengeance or mercy. Was she cruel, or did she spare Actaeon the worst by turning him into something simpler? Something less complicated than shame and memory and awkward eye contact. You run until the trees open suddenly into a meadow. A quiet one. Grassy. Soft. The moon is full low in the sky, casting everything in silver. The stars ever-nosy watch like theater-goers at the final act. You pause, chest heaving, legs shaking. The dogs encircle you again, and this time you don't bolt. You just stand there. It's not surrender, not quite. It's recognition. This moment, it was always coming. One dog, your oldest, edges forward. His eyes flicker, his nose twitches. You remember him as a pup, all paws and ears and anxiety. You called him Oros, meaning mountain. You wanted him to be strong. He sniffs your leg. His tail lowers. Then he whines, a soft, small sound. It cuts through you more than the bite did. Another dog joins him. They're uncertain now. Not because they recognize you fully, but because something in you isn't quite prey. Not fully, not yet. And that's the problem, isn't it? You're stuck in the middle. Not man, not deer, just myth. And myths don't get to be comfortable. They don't get clarity. They just echo. The wind shifts. You feel it. A subtle hush. The dogs look up. You follow their gaze. There she is, Artemis. On the ridge, bow in hand, her silhouette cut clean against the sky. You expect her to raise it, but she doesn't. Instead, she places one hand on the hilt, just resting it there, waiting. You don't know if it's a threat or a farewell, but the dogs, they understand. They leap, not out of hatred, not out of bloodlust, just command. You run again, but slower now, not from exhaustion, from understanding. The meadow becomes memory. The memory becomes myth. The myth becomes yours. And in the quiet spaces between hoofbeats, you feel something else. Relief. Because the chase is no longer punishment. It's the only part of you that still remembers being human. You slow to a canter, then a jog, then something that isn't quite movement at all, more like drifting. Like the forest itself is carrying you forward, pushing you ahead on a cushion of dew and dread. The moonlight stretches your shadow across the clearing, turning your silhouette into something monstrous or noble. Depends on the angle. Behind you, the dogs scatter again. They aren't retreating, just circling. One always flanks left, two drop back into the brush, rustling the leaves like cautious applause. Their presence is constant now, like the thud of your heartbeat or the ache in your legs. You're not their master. You're not even their mystery. You're their mission. And Artemis, she doesn't follow anymore. She's ahead of you now. You glimpse her from time to time. A pale wrist here, a glimmer of silver cloth there, the gleam of her bow like a falling star caught in midair. She doesn't speak. She doesn't smile. But her gaze never wavers. You're not sure if she's proud of you or bored. Because this chase isn't really about catching you. It's about changing you. And not just your antlers or your legs or your deeply unfortunate first sweat situation. It's your thoughts, your very self. You keep reaching for words and find instincts instead. You try to remember the name of your cousin, the one who used to sharpen your arrows, and all you get is a mental picture of moss. Moss, you reach a shallow ridge and pause. There in the dirt are tracks. Your tracks. You've been here before. Not in the last hour. Not since Artemis waved her slow-burning spell across your face. No, years ago. As a boy. As a hunter. When your feet were feet and your worries were small. You remember kneeling here once, tracing hoofprints in this very soil, wondering what kind of beast left them behind. Now you know. You left them. The forest, it seems, is fond of circles. You move again, unsure whether you're running or being run. The trees thicken. The light dims. You dodge left, then right, then back again. Not because you're being chased now, but because it's all you know how to do. You move like a story trying to escape its ending. And yet, the ending is everywhere. In the branches that scratch your sides. In the silence that hangs between every dog's breath. In the fact that your reflection when you finally spot it in a dark stream doesn't make you flinch anymore. The antlers. They suit you now. You don't like that. You don't want that. You remember stories. You remember taverns, scrolls late-night retellings by half-drunk poets who couldn't find a rhyme for stag but tried anyway. They always told this myth fast, like it was simple. Hunter sees goddess. Goddess gets mad. Hunter becomes deer. Dogs chase. The end. No one ever said the transformation was slow. No one ever said the worst part wasn't the dogs but the waiting. The knowing that it's not your body breaking that hurts. It's your mind fading. Historians still argue whether the myth of Actaeon was originally tragic or cautionary. Some early vase paintings show the stag mid-run dogs leaping with glee, no sign of remorse. Others show a human face under the antlers twisted in pain or wonder or something that looks suspiciously like acceptance. You stumble over a root and collapse against a fallen log. Your sides heave. Your knees tremble. The dogs hesitate. And in that moment, you remember a girl. She used to braid flowers into your hair, not for love, for fun. She'd laugh and say, "You're much prettier than any deer." You clutch that thought like a dying ember. Not because you want her back, but because she knew you. You, not the you with antlers, not the you who runs, just you. A low growl snaps your attention back. The dogs are tense again, eyes fixed. Not at you, behind you. You turn, and there she is, Artemis, at the edge of the clearing, still not speaking, still not firing. But this time something's changed. She raises her hand. No bow, just a single gesture. Like a wave, like a farewell, or maybe just maybe like permission. The dogs whine and fall still. You take a breath, then another, then rise, slowly. And for the first time, you don't run. You walk. Carefully, cautiously. Every step feels strange, not because of the hooves, because of the choice. No one is pushing you now. You're walking because you can. You reach a stream and pause again. This time not to drink, just to look. The reflection that stares back is unfamiliar, but not hostile. The antlers catch moonlight. The fur bristles in the breeze. Your eyes, deep, unreadable, still yours. Barely. But still, and as you turn to leave the water's edge, you feel a breeze brush past you. You don't need to look up to know she's gone. Artemis. Gone. Or maybe not gone, just done. You're not sure what that means. But you know you're not being chased anymore. Now it's just the forest. And you. And whatever comes next. The forest accepts you now, or at least tolerates you like a stray note in a familiar song. You don't feel welcome exactly. You feel integrated. Like moss on stone, like vines creeping over ruins. The kind of acceptance that doesn't clap when you arrive but doesn't chase you off either. The dogs trail you but from a distance now. Not as hunters, as shadows, as memory. You glance back and see them threading between trees, silent, watchful, no longer barking, no longer biting. And maybe that's the worst part, because now that the chase is over, you don't know who you are to them anymore. Not prey. Not master, just a shape with legs. They vanish into the trees as quickly as they came, like ghosts evaporating at sunrise. You don't call after them, even if you could. You press forward not because the forest tells you to, but because staying still feels wrong. The ground beneath your hooves is cool and soft, thick with pine needles and moonlight. Your antlers snag on a low-hanging branch and you duck easily. You've done this before. Maybe not you exactly, but this body. It remembers. The trees part, revealing a new landscape. Hills roll gently into a wide valley dotted with olive trees. A breeze whispers up from the distant sea, carrying the scent of salt and old stones. You pause at the crest of the hill and drink it in. For a moment, the world feels big, and you feel small, but not powerless. You look down at the slope, and that's when you see them. Other deer, not many. 4 or 5, grazing quietly in a grove where the moonlight pools like milk. One lifts its head and stares at you, not alarmed, not curious, just aware. And here's the strange part. They recognize you. You don't know how you know that, but you do. There's something in the tilt of their ears, the angle of their shoulders. They see your antlers and your gait and your two alert eyes, and they know. Not that you were once a man, but that you aren't entirely a deer. Not yet. You step into the grove slowly, your hooves sinking into the loamy earth. The others move aside just enough to let you pass. No ceremony, no whispers, but you feel it inclusion. One of them, older with a scar across his haunch, snorts softly and returns to grazing. Another flicks her tail. That's the welcome. And honestly, it's enough. You try to eat. You lower your head toward the grass and sniff. It smells fine, like grass, like life. But chewing it feels awkward. Your jaw wants to move differently. Your tongue still remembers olives soaked in oil bread torn warm from the fire. Still, you try. Historians still argue whether Actaeon's transformation was ever meant to include this part. The aftermath. The living. Some claim he was torn apart by his dogs instantly. No redemption, no reflection. Others argue that he escaped into the woods changed forever and lived among the deer like a ghost in antlers. A few even suggest that Artemis allowed him this second life as a kind of mercy eternal exile in exchange for eternal awareness. You don't know what version you're in, but you know it's not over. The herd begins to move. You follow because you don't want to be left behind. And because something in you, deep and stubborn, still thinks of her Artemis, the goddess with the silent judgment and the beautiful cruelty. You wonder if she's still watching, if she ever stopped. You cross a stream. Again, not the same one. The water here is warm, slow, shallow enough to reflect the stars clearly. You watch your hooves ripple in the current, and for just a moment you see something else, your old face, pale and moonlit, flickering beneath the surface. You blink, and it's gone. The deer move ahead. You stay back, because the forest isn't chasing you anymore. But you're still running from forgetting. You find a hollow beneath an olive tree, the branches heavy with fruit you can't eat anymore. You lie down awkwardly, legs folded tight, and stare up at the stars. There's Orion the hunter, and there's the moon. She's full tonight. Of course she is. She always is when someone learns a lesson. You close your eyes and dream not of cities or temples or battles, but of leaves brushing your side, of hounds at your heels, of a woman made of light and silence. In your dream, you are human again, but no one recognizes you, not even yourself. You wake before dawn. The deer are gone. The forest is silent again. You rise and walk, not because someone told you to, but because standing still makes your chest feel tight. You follow the slope of the hill until you reach a grove of cypress trees, tall and thin, like gossiping figures frozen mid-sentence. In the center, a stone. Not a temple, not a tomb, just a stone. Plain, weathered, inscribed with 3 faint letters. Actaeon. You don't need the rest. You know who it's for. You, or what's left of you. You nudge it with your nose gently. A gesture, a nod. Not forgiveness, not quite acceptance, just acknowledgement. You turn away before the sun rises fully because deer don't like open light. And because the myth isn't finished yet. The sun rises slowly, reluctantly, like it knows it's intruding on something too ancient to disturb. You stay in the shadows under low branches and against tree trunks where light filters through in soft dapples that never quite touch your face. The forest looks different now, bathed in gold. Less like a trap. More like a theater that swept up after the show. You tread softly, hooves barely whispering against the loam. No dogs behind you, no goddess in the trees, just birds finally brave enough to sing again and the hum of insects getting on with their tiny, oblivious lives. And yet, you can't shake the feeling that something's shifted. You're not being chased, but you're still being watched. The myth hasn't ended, it's just changed form. Slowed down, gone quiet. You crest another hill and find yourself in a place so familiar your breath catches. A clearing, circular, smooth. Trees stand around it like a council, all leaning in their leaves, trembling with memory. You've been here before, not as a deer, not even just as a man, as a boy. Long ago, before temples and hunting dogs and divine punishments, you came here with your father. You remember his voice, low, warm, telling you stories about the gods, about Artemis. He said, respect her grove. Keep your eyes on your own path. You didn't listen, not then, not when it counted. And now, you walk into the clearing, each hoof step pressing gently into soil that still holds echoes of laughter of childhood. You find the stump you used to sit on. You lower yourself beside it, and you wait. Not for rescue, not for transformation, just to remember. Because even now, with your antlers tangled in the branches and your tail twitching against flies, you remember. The bread you shared with your dogs. The thrill of a perfect shot. The way the world used to open wide when you woke full of possibility instead of myth. And yet you also remember the moment you stepped into that clearing. The wrong one. The sacred one. You didn't mean to. You swear you didn't. But Artemis doesn't care about intention, only trespass. And that's what you did. You saw her, and she saw you. Historians still argue whether that seeing him glimpsing her, her choosing him, was symbolic, spiritual, or just classic mortal stupidity. Some say it's about the boundaries between divine and human and the price of crossing them. Others argue it's not about seeing at all. It's about being seen. And the danger of becoming too visible to a power that prefers silence. You chew absently on a leaf. Not because you're hungry, but because the deer in you is growing restless. He likes the quiet. He thrives in it. The human in you. He wants to scream. You don't. You can't. But you do look up, and you see her. Again. But this time not Artemis. Not really. It's a statue, moss-covered, cracked, half sunk into the earth. But unmistakably, her bow in one hand, a deer beside her, and that familiar, maddening calm etched into her marble face. You approach slowly. She doesn't move, obviously, but the weight of her gaze is still there even in stone. You circle the statue once, twice. You examine the base. No inscription, no altar, just roots winding up through the cracks and the faint outline of vines that have long since died away. This isn't a shrine. It's a memory. Maybe yours. Maybe the forest's. You lie down beside it, your flank pressing into the soft, mossy ground. And for a moment you think of speaking, of asking a question, of begging. But what would you even ask? Why? Was it really that bad? Couldn't you have just looked away? But those questions don't matter now. They're too late. The deer you've become doesn't ask. He moves, he survives, he adapts. And you're still somewhere in between. That's the hardest part, isn't it? The slowness of it. Not the transformation, but the forgetting. You can still picture the room where you were born. The face of the girl who braided flowers into your hair. The smell of storm-damp stone after a hunt. But each memory feels thinner now, like parchment left out in the wind. Soon you fear they'll disappear entirely. And what's left? Instinct. Fur. A pair of eyes that blink but don't remember why. You press your head against the statue's base. You don't cry. Deer don't cry. But something inside you aches in that same rhythm. A breeze lifts the leaves. The statue shifts slightly, just settling, but it feels like movement. Her face tilts, and for the briefest second, you imagine she's looking at you. Really looking. And in that impossible imagined gaze, you feel something different. Not mercy, not apology, but acknowledgement. She knows what you've lost, and she's letting you keep what little remains. You close your eyes, antlers resting against stone, and drift into a half-sleep that smells like bark in twilight. You dream of neither man nor deer. You dream of stillness. You wake before the forest does. The sky is that early sort of pale where it's not quite light and not quite dark, just a quiet in-between, like the world hasn't made up its mind yet. A few birds chirp, unsure if they're supposed to start or wait. The wind barely stirs. Your eyes open slowly, and for a long time you don't move. You lie curled at the base of Artemis's mossy statue, dew gathering on your fur ears, twitching at the crackle of distant underbrush. The dream clings to you, something about running, not from anything but towards something that had already disappeared. You rise. It's becoming easier now standing on four legs. You hate how natural it feels. You hate how you don't hate it as much as you used to. That's how it gets you. The forest stretches before you, wide, endless. You begin to walk not fast, just enough to keep the morning chill off. Your hooves leave soft dents in the earth that vanish almost as soon as they're made. It feels like a metaphor, a very on-the-nose one. You pass trees you once used for target practice, stones you once perched on for long philosophical sighs. Everything that made you feel big and clever and mortal now dwarfs you. And not just because of size, because you don't belong to it anymore. You belong to the woods, which wouldn't be the worst thing, except you used to belong to yourself. You drink from a stream. The water is cold, and it tastes like moss and old secrets. You catch your reflection again, this time a little more clearly. The antlers suit you. Your eyes look deeper set, less wild, less afraid, not because you're braver, because you're further gone. You blink slowly, deer style, long and lazy, like a creature with nothing left to explain. And then you hear it, a voice, not Artemis, not a hunter, a human. You freeze, one hoof lifted mid-step. Every hair on your back lifts slightly. Voices in the forest mean only one thing. A story is about to start again. You crouch low, hidden by ferns and brush, and peek through the green. Two figures step into view, young, wrapped in travel cloaks, quivers strapped across their backs. They speak softly, laughing at something. You can't quite hear the words, but you recognize the shape of them. One of them steps toward the water's edge, toward where you stood just moments ago. You watch completely still, not because you're afraid, because you know what happens next. One wrong step. One curious glance, one twig snapped in a sacred grove, and Artemis might appear again, disapprove again, transform again. You should run. You should flee like the animal you've become. But you don't. You stay. You watch the humans with something close to pity. Not superiority, never that. Just the quiet ache of someone who knows. The first hunter stoops, drinks from the stream, then straightens. He looks toward the trees, toward you. Your heart lurches, but he doesn't see you. He squints, shrugs, and walks on. You exhale. Not relief, just air. You trail them from a distance, curious despite yourself. Their boots leave impressions in the soft dirt, the kind you used to make. They speak of gods, of Artemis, of stories they half remember. You listen. They get the myth wrong. They say you were arrogant, that you chose to spy, that Artemis warned you first, that your dogs tore you apart and Artemis watched with cold delight. You feel something stir. Not anger, not sadness, just distance. You're not that story anymore. You're the one watching it now. They move on. You don't follow. You return to the grove, the statue still half lost in vines, the clearing still dappled in silver and gold. You curl beside the base again, not to hide, to guard. The deer in you has instincts. It doesn't understand shrines or guilt or divine wrath, but it knows how to stand watch. And something in you thinks that maybe this is your purpose now. To be the reminder, not the victim, not the warning carved in stone. The presence. The thing people glimpse through the trees and wonder, was that? The myth come alive, but not chasing, not running, just being. Historians still argue whether Actaeon ever got justice, whether Artemis ever regretted her decision. Some say she visited him in dreams, whispering apologies in the form of wind and moonlight. Others say she never thought about him again. Gods have more important things to do. But there's a version, quiet, hidden, scrawled in the margins of a forgotten scroll that claims she returns. Not to reverse the curse, but to leave behind a gift, a grove, a silence, a place where no one else will be punished, because he already was. You shift your weight. The sun warms your back. A bird lands nearby and doesn't startle. And for the first time in what feels like years, your mind goes still. No chase, no change, no war between man and deer. Just you, under Artemis's quiet sky. Midday arrives like a sigh, long and slow and heavy with heat. The forest softens around you. Leaves droop. Bees float lazily in loops that look less like navigation and more like accidental dancing. Somewhere nearby, water trickles over stones, the same sound repeating itself until it becomes a background hum like the forest's lullaby to itself. You remain still. You've grown good at stillness, the kind of stillness that's not hiding but enduring. You don't sleep, not exactly, but you drift half aware, half forgetting. Thoughts bubble up and fade again. You remember the smell of roasted chestnuts, the curve of a bowstring, the sharp laugh of someone who once pulled you out of a thorn bush and called you useless but lucky. And then nothing. Then just trees and sun and the feeling of fur slowly rising and falling with each breath. A deer walks past you. Not a herd this time, just one. Small, delicate eyes wide. It looks at you, you look back. Something passes between you. Recognition. Curiosity, or maybe just the quiet agreement of two things that no longer need to explain themselves. She moves on. You stay. Later clouds gather, not threatening ones, just sleepy, low-hanging things that dangle over the canopy like wool blankets. They don't block the light entirely, they just blur it. You like it better this way. Less sharp, less visible. You wonder for the first time in a while whether Artemis is still watching, and whether it matters. Because here's the thing. No one ever talks about in myths what happens after. After the punishment, after the pain, after the climax. The arrow has flown. The dogs have howled. The lesson's been learned, or at least taught. And now you just exist. And that's the strange tragedy of it. You survive. In most versions of the myth, that's not the case. They say the dogs don't hesitate, that they fall upon you in a wave of muscle and loyalty and forgetfulness, that Artemis watches impassive, that the forest echoes with the sound of a man who can no longer scream like a man. But that's the story people want. The neat one, the cruel one, the short one. But myths don't need to be short, and cruelty doesn't need to be clean. There are other versions, ones where you escape broken but breathing, where the dogs stop just short, sniff, and slink away, confused and trembling, where Artemis lifts her hand not to strike but to say, enough. And that version, that's you now. Still here, still breathing, still antlered, but not undone. You walk a little now, more out of restlessness than reason. The forest greets your hooves like it remembers them. Maybe it does. Maybe deer carry stories in their feet. Maybe every track you leave in the mud is a half-sentence scratched onto a living page. You reach a glade you don't remember knowing, but it knows you. The grass here is soft. The air smells faintly of rosemary. And in the center, almost too perfectly placed, is a fallen log carved with initials. Yours. Well, his. Actaeon. You approach slowly. The bark has peeled back in spots, revealing soft, pale wood beneath. Someone years ago scratched a message just under the name. It was never yours to see. You feel it like a bruise beneath the fur. Because they're right, it wasn't. And yet, you saw it. Not just Artemis, not just her bath. You saw divinity, not in the shining, majestic thunderbolt sense, in the real sense. The uninvited, intimate, dangerous sense. The kind that transforms not out of punishment, but out of necessity. Because once you see the divine, you can't go back. And you didn't. You didn't get to. You walk past the log. Because even now, that part of the story isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the ones who tell it. You belong to the forest. You cross another shallow stream and feel something strange, a pulse beneath your hooves. Not pain, not fear, just presence. You stop, look around. The clearing is empty, but you know she's here. Artemis. Not standing, not judging, just there. A warmth in the wind, a shimmer in the leaves. No punishment this time, no silence either. Just something like closure, or the closest thing to it a myth ever gets. You lower your head, not in surrender, not in reverence, just in recognition, and then you lift it again. Because this moment isn't for her, it's for you. You keep walking, and the forest closes behind you like a curtain. The sun is soft when it begins to fall again, retreating behind the hills like a bashful actor after a long monologue. The light turns warm and slanted, catching on spiderwebs, slipping through the cracks and old bark washing the forest. In that familiar golden hush that makes everything feel just a little more sacred, or at least suspiciously cinematic, you wander. Not aimlessly, there's too much rhythm in it for that. You follow a pattern you don't remember learning. Around a crumbling stone wall overtaken by ivy, across a field where clover grows thick enough to cushion each step, through a ring of ash trees whose branches dip low like nodding heads, the world feels quieter now, but not empty. Because as you pause near a shallow bend in a creek, something clicks into place. You're being watched again, only this time it's not a goddess, it's mortals. Two of them not the same from before. Older, armed, focused. One of them carries a short bow across his back, the other a net rolled tight against his belt. Hunters, not metaphorical ones, real ones. Your ears twitch unbidden, your eyes sharpen, your breath goes shallow. Because you know what this is now, not from memory, but from instinct. This is how it begins. The hunter sees the deer. The deer bolts. The hunter gives chase. That's the formula. You helped invent it. But now you're on the wrong end. They don't see you at first. They're crouched near a tree, whispering low. The wind shifts. Your scent reaches them. You see one head snap in your direction. Eye contact. You freeze. He doesn't blink. He whispers something to the other and the bow is slowly unhooked. You exhale once softly, and then you run. Not in panic. Not like the first time. No wild crashing through branches. No chaos. This run is smooth, measured, deer-shaped. You leap over a rotted log, dart through a thicket, veer sharply around a pond reflecting the pink sky. Behind you, footsteps. Not close, not fast, but confident. You glance over your shoulder and feel something twist in your chest, not fear exactly, not dread, but recognition. You know these people. Not by name, not their faces, but their roles. Their function, they are you from the before times, when your legs ended in feet, when your thoughts ended in targets. You were them, and now you're the myth they whisper about over campfires. The stag no one ever quite catches, the flash of silver in the trees. Some say you're sacred, some say you're cursed. Some say Artemis rides your back across the sky when the moon is full. You're none of those things. You're just still here, still running. Historians still argue whether the myth of Actaeon was meant to scare mortals or console them. Was it a warning against pride? A divine keep-out sign posted at the edge of mortal ambition? Or was it a subtle kindness? A reminder that even after punishment, there's a kind of survival, that you can be broken and still move. You slow eventually, not because they've stopped chasing, but because they've lost the trail. You hear their footsteps fade. Hear one curse softly. Hear the bow being reslung. They won't find you. No one ever does. You're not a deer. Not really. You're the space between stories. The bit people skip over because it doesn't fit neatly on a vase or a scroll. You're not the transformation. You're what comes after. And no one carves statues of the after. You pause in another clearing as twilight settles in, yes. The air hums with crickets and the dry crackle of late summer. A single owl calls low and sleepy. You listen, and then, somewhere on the edge of hearing, you catch it. Laughter. Not mocking, not cruel, just light, human. Someone's telling your story again. You can almost hear it. He walked right into the sacred grove, can you believe it? Just stumbled in like he was checking his hair. And then the inevitable in Artemis. She turned him into a deer. Pause for effect. Then his own dogs tore him apart. You snort, not loudly, just enough. Because you know what that version leaves out. It leaves out the ache, the in-between, the almosts and maybes. The long days of walking and remembering. The dogs that didn't bite. The look in Artemis's eyes that might have been mercy, or might have been something else. They leave out the forest that remembers your name, even after you've forgotten it. They leave you out. But that's okay, because myths aren't for the ones they happen to. They're for the ones who come next. And you're still here. You turn from the clearing and walk deeper into the trees, the light behind you fading fast. Not running now. Not chasing anything. Just walking, like a deer who remembers being a man. Or maybe the other way around. You move through the trees like a thought someone forgot to finish. The kind of thought that starts with "what if?" and drifts into silence. Your hooves barely leave prints now, not because you're light, but because the forest knows not to hold on to your steps anymore. There's a smell on the windwood smoke. Not close, but close enough to make you pause. You know what smoke means, people. Campfires, stories, meat you no longer eat, voices you no longer answer to. You drift toward it anyway, pulled not by hunger or curiosity, but habit, the part of you that still turns toward human things like a plant reaching for light through a crack in stone. The trees thin. You stop at the edge of a small rise half-shielded by brambles. Below, there's a camp. 3 figures hunched around a low fire, shadows flickering across their faces. They pass a wineskin between them. One is laughing, another sharpening a knife. The third holds a scroll, squinting in the firelight. You lean closer, ears twitching. I've turned into a stag, one of them mutters. The scroll bearer nods, by Artemis, for looking at her. She doesn't like being seen, apparently. Can't blame her, the knife sharpener grins. I wouldn't want to be ogled while bathing either. They laugh. The sound is warm, harmless wrong, because they don't know what it means to be seen by a goddess, not admired, not desired, seen like an error in a sacred pattern. A wrinkle that must be ironed out. They speak of you like a warning, but they don't speak of the forest. They don't mention the long days, the slow forgetting, the quiet surrender of language to leaves, of memory to muscle. The way your heartbeat now syncs with wind. They don't know that even now you're listening, watching. You take a step back, you won't interrupt. That's not your role anymore. But as you turn to leave, you catch sight of something glinting near their fire, a tiny silver charm, a deer, stylized, pretty. The kind people wear for luck, not reverence. You sigh just barely. It's always like this. You become a symbol and people stop looking for your shape. Only the outline matters, the meaning they give you. You vanish into the trees and the stories go on without you. Somewhere deeper in the forest, an owl takes flight. You hear its wings beat against the air like soft applause. You follow not because you need to, but because it's a motion that makes sense. Following, not leading, not fleeing, just following. The moon rises late tonight, a thin sliver, Artemis's smile perhaps. Or her warning. It doesn't matter, you're past reading signs. Instead, you walk until you reach a place that smells like stone. Ancient, unmoved. The kind of place people walk around without realizing why. A ring of stones buried waist-deep in moss and time. No inscriptions, just presence. You step into the center and stop. It feels familiar. In that way, memories sometimes do when you're not sure if they happened to you or to someone who told you about them. You close your eyes and feel the hum beneath your hooves, the pulse of the old world still beating somewhere below. Maybe this is where Artemis stood when she first saw you. Maybe this is where the spell began. Or maybe, just maybe, this is where it ends. Historians still argue whether Actaeon's tale was always meant to end in death. Some say the Greeks demanded consequences for hubris. Others believe his story was softened over time, edited for the ears of children or the egos of kings. But a few fringe voices buried in obscure commentaries and back-alley scroll markets suggest something stranger, that Actaeon's fate wasn't punishment but initiation, a forced elevation, from man to myth, from hunter to symbol. And symbols don't die, they loop, they echo. They walk in circles inside forests that outlive empires. You open your eyes. You're still here, and the forest is still listening. You step out of the ring and continue. The wind picks up, slightly brushing your fur. It's gentle, almost affectionate. You wonder, not for the first time, if Artemis ever felt regret. Not guilt, just a pause. Did she ever return to the place it happened? Did she ever say your name again? You'll never know. But maybe that's all right. Because the deer you've become, he doesn't ask questions like that. He just walks. And as you move through the trees, the night folds over you like a familiar blanket. You are not forgiven. You are not forgotten. You are simply there. The forest is different at night. Not darker exactly, just deeper. As if everything gets one layer thicker. The air, the silence, even the shadows. They all press in a little closer like they want to know your name. Which is awkward because you've mostly forgotten it. You remember the shape of it, though. Something with an A. Something that used to get shouted across courtyards, whispered by firelight etched into wine cups. Now it's just a hum in your bones. A syllable you used to fit inside. But the forest doesn't ask for names. It only asks for presence and quiet, which you've gotten very good at. You walk the perimeter of a meadow, its edges stitched with tall grass that tickles your sides. Somewhere nearby, a fox yawns. An insect chorus hums an irregular rhythm like someone half remembering a song they learned in childhood. And then crack, a sound that doesn't belong. You freeze. It's not a loud crack, more like a misstep. A heel pressed too hard on a stick. You wait. It comes again. Someone's here. You duck behind a thicket, lowering your antlers carefully so they don't snag on the low branches. You've learned how to vanish now. Not disappear, just become background. And through the grass, you see him. A boy. Alone. Young, maybe 15, maybe younger. He holds a spear with the kind of casual overconfidence that usually comes right before disaster. He isn't hunting. He's pretending to hunt. Big difference. He crouches, frowns, steps forward, and sees you. You lock eyes. And in that strange, slow moment, you realize he knows your story. Not well, not entirely, but he knows enough. His eyes widen. His mouth opens just a little like the beginning of a question or an apology. He doesn't run, and you don't bolt. You just look at each other, maybe for a breath, maybe for a season. Time is weird in stories. Then slowly, carefully, he lowers the spear. Not all the way, but enough. You nod almost imperceptibly. He nods back, then he turns and walks away. No dramatic exit, no words, just quiet footsteps returning to wherever he came from. You watch him go, and something like warmth flickers inside you. Not joy, not hope. Just acknowledgement. You're a story he met once and respected enough not to finish. That's rare. You rest beneath a pine tree, the scent of sap sharp in your nose. A breeze whispers overhead, and for a second you swear it speaks. Not in words, in feelings. Like someone brushing fingers through your memory and leaving behind only the parts that no longer hurt. You remember your cousin again, the one who taught you to gut fish and spit properly. His laugh comes back to you clear and whole. You remember the ache of carrying too much gear up a hill, the pride of a clean hunt, the shame of a missed shot. And oddly, you remember figs. You used to love figs. Why does that feel important? You drift into sleep without realizing it. Deer sleep, which is more like napping with the nerves on high alert. But tonight, the forest holds you like it's finally accepted the weight of your story. In your dream, you are neither deer nor man. You are something in between. You walk through a city where no one looks twice at your antlers. Children feed you apples. Priests nod respectfully. A girl draws you on a piece of parchment with coal-smudged fingers. You walk into a temple, and Artemis is there. She doesn't scold you, doesn't praise you. She just places a hand on your shoulder. And you wake. The moon is high. The forest is still. You rise, shake off dew, and continue moving. Because sleep was never your destination, just a place to rest. And now, you remember something else. You are not lost. You are becoming. Historians still argue whether Actaeon's transformation was meant to be permanent. Some myths insist he died that day, torn to pieces. Others, obscure ones whispered by fringe philosophers and forest-dwelling mystics, suggest he never died at all. That he simply walked away deeper into the woods until even the gods forgot his name. Those are the stories you like best. Because forgetting isn't always a curse. Sometimes it's a kindness. You keep walking, And the night walks with you. Dawn returns with a shrug, the kind that stretches across the sky in pink and lavender, cracking the bones of night one joint at a time. The forest yawns. You stretch awkwardly legs in four directions like a dropped marionette and rise from the mossy hollow where you rested. You don't feel rested. You feel rewound, like time has clicked back half a step not to repeat, but to gently insist you try again with a little more awareness this time. The morning is cooler than usual. A mist drapes low over the ground, and each breath you take fogs out in front of you like smoke from a memory. Your hooves leave prints now briefly visible on the damp earth before fading into nothing. The symbolism is almost rude. You walk. Where to? You don't know. Deer don't ask questions like that, but the man you used to be does. And he still whispers now and then. This morning he's louder, because you've started to hear a pattern in the forest's noise, the rhythm of cicadas, the swish of leaves, the rustle of unseen things. It loops, repeats. Not like a song, but like a warning. The forest remembers, and it doesn't let go. You reach a small rise and see something ahead that makes your breath hitch a stone circle. Not the same as before. This one's larger, newer, maintained. It's a shrine to Artemis. No statue this time, just a smooth altar stone worn in the middle from years of offerings. Around it lie bowls, bits of cloth-carved tokens. Someone has left a pomegranate split open like a gesture or a wound. You stay at the edge, because you shouldn't go closer. But you do. Of course you do, because the man in you wants to see, and the deer in you doesn't know why not. You step into the circle, each hoof step, soft, deliberate, loud only in your head. The smell here is different, less wild, more controlled. Frankincense, maybe. Something sacred. You lower your head toward the stone, and that's when you hear her. A voice. Not in your ears, in your ribs. Not words, just presence. Like someone pressing their palm flat against your chest from inside your own body. You go very still, and you listen. No commands, no accusations. Just the quiet, weighty echo of someone remembering you. Artemis, still watching. Still aware? You expect fear to rise up. It doesn't. What comes instead is stranger. Relief. Because even after everything, after the grove, the change, the dogs, the shame, she still knows you and hasn't undone you yet. Historians still argue whether Artemis ever showed mercy. Some say she was rigid, absolute divine in her indifference. Others claim she had moments, brief hidden ones, where her justice bent into something almost soft, where she let a life go on twisted, altered, but spared. You wonder which version this is, but you don't ask. You simply bow your head, not in worship, not in regret, in gratitude, for being remembered. And then you leave the shrine, not hurriedly, not reverently, just completely. You find a clearing on the other side of the ridge and lie down. The grass is warm here. A breeze combs through your fur with idle fingers. Insects buzz lazily overhead, charting flights that serve no purpose and no god. You close your eyes, and for the first time since all this began, you don't see her. You see yourself. Not whole, not human, but you. The laugh that came too loud. The joke that flopped. The dog you raised from a pup. The time you tried to sing and cracked on the high note and kept going anyway. That version of you still exists, just not in the way people would expect. And that's okay. Because the forest holds stories the cities forget, and you are one of them. A myth with muddy feet. A curse that still eats, still sleeps, still watches dawn arrive like an old friend who never stops by at the right time. You roll to your side, let your antlers catch on a low branch, and don't even curse under your breath. Because deer don't curse, and men don't dream like this. But you do both. The sun arcs overhead, now bright and indifferent. You walk beneath it like someone trying not to be noticed, even though you glow in this light gold on your flanks, amber. In your eyes, shadowed where your body meets tree and sky. You're not hiding, but you're not found either. You follow an old trail. The kind that used to be a road centuries ago, maybe. A path carved by sandals and hooves and wheels. Now it's half swallowed by vines, interrupted by roots, quietly reclaiming its purposelessness. But you remember this road. Sort of. You remember walking it once with your father back when you still had fingers? He talked the whole way about gods, about hunting, about how silence is the best strategy and yet never practiced by old men giving advice. You pause at a bend where a tree has split the trail in two. One path curls left, the other right. You take neither. Instead, you turn around. Because today isn't about forward. It's about remembering. You return to the grove. The first one. The sacred one. The scene of your greatest mistake or, depending on who's telling the story, your greatest accident. It hasn't changed much. The water still shines like a polished mirror. The trees still lean protectively over the pool, their roots curled like fists in the soil. The air is still thick with the kind of quiet that screams at your conscience. You step to the edge and wait. You half expect her to appear, to rise from the mist, to lift a bow or a hand or a verdict. But she doesn't. She's not here. She doesn't need to be. Because this place is her. Not a representation, not a relic. A presence. You lower your head, drink from the same pool you once intruded upon. It tastes the same cool metallic disapproving. You don't flinch, because you've already become what she wanted. You walk around the pool retracing your steps, not the ones that brought you here, but the ones that came after. Through the woods, through the pain, through the slow daily undoing. And as you do, you feel something strange, the forest accepting you. Not tolerating, not just letting you stay, but folding you in. As if your story has finally synced with the soil. Your hooves sink a little deeper. Your breath slows. You pause beside a familiar tree, one with a long scar down its trunk, like someone tried to cut it and then change their mind. You press your side against it, not because it means anything, but because it feels like it should. Historians still argue whether Actaeon was ever meant to matter. He wasn't a king. He didn't slay a monster. He didn't spark a war or end one. His name shows up in a few plays, a few vases. A story people know but never quite tell. But maybe that's why it lingers. Not every myth needs to be grand. Some just need to be remembered. You step back from the pool, and that's when you see her. Not Artemis, not the goddess, not even a vision. A deer, smaller than you, lighter. Her coat mottled, her eyes sharp. She stands on the far side of the water and stares at you. And just like that, you're no longer alone. You tilt your head slightly. So does she. You lower your antlers. So does she. It's not communication. It's acknowledgement. Like a mirror, but better. Because this reflection moves differently. She turns, walks into the trees, and you follow. Not because you have to. Because you can. You move in tandem like two leaves caught in the same breeze. She doesn't ask who you were. She doesn't care. She only knows who you are now. Another body in the woods made of quiet and consequence. And that's enough. Eventually, she veers off into the underbrush. You don't follow, because not every path is yours. You lie down in a patch of clover, the stalks soft beneath your chest. The sun finds you through the canopy in bits and pieces. You let it, because it doesn't burn anymore, and neither does the memory. You're not healed. You're not whole, but you're not hiding either. You are seen, and this time, that's okay. The sky is melting into dusk again. The blues get heavier, the golds retreat. Shadows grow long and soft, draping the forest like old linen. You move through it slowly now. Not because you're tired, though you are, but because the pace finally fits. You're no longer running. You're no longer hunted. You're just here. The trees whisper the same lullaby they've always sung, but now you understand more of it. Not all. Never all. But enough to know when to stop, when to listen, and when to keep walking. You climb a low ridge not to escape, just to see. At the top, the forest spills out below like a sea of ink-green waves. The wind brushes your flanks gently, like it's checking to make sure you're still real. The last edge of sunlight settles on your antlers, and for a flickering second they glow. You look like something divine. Then it fades. Of course it does. You settle onto your belly legs, tucked antlers catching on the grass. You watch the moon rise, a little fuller tonight, a little nearer, and maybe a little warmer. They still tell your story, you know. They always will. Sometimes you're the fool. Sometimes you're the victim. Sometimes you're the warning whisper to young hunters who step too far, speak too loudly, look too long. But here's the truth they never say. You weren't cursed. You were chosen to carry the silence forward, to walk between man and myth, to remember what gods forget. And that heavy, strange, lonely is still a kind of grace. The forest breathes with you. And for once, it doesn't feel like it's breathing around you. It feels like with. Historians still argue whether Artemis turned you into a deer out of rage or principle. Some say it was punishment. Others insist it was protection, an act of mercy so complex it looked like cruelty. One obscure theory laughed off in the symposiums but never quite erased suggests it wasn't punishment at all. It was transformation, the kind that makes a man into a legend, and a legend into a whisper, and a whisper into something the wind carries forever. You lie still as the night wraps around you. You don't sleep. Not really. You become the hush between crickets. The flick of a tail just out of sight. The shape in the trees no one's quite sure they saw. You are Actaeon. You are not Actaeon. You are the story that didn't end. And the forest, it remembers you. Always. Now just rest. Let your breath stretch long like the shadows across the grove. Let your heartbeat slow to match the ancient rhythm of the earth beneath you. You've traveled far through time, through memory, through myth wrapped in moss and moonlight. The forest is quiet now. Not empty, just satisfied. Even the owls have stopped their questions. Even the wind seems to exhale. You are not waiting anymore. You are not seeking anything. You are not trying to remember what was taken or what was given. You are simply present. Still, safe, and unseen by anything that would harm you. There's no need to chase the shape of who you once were. No need to fear the sound of hounds or the sharpness of divine judgment. All of that is behind you, folded into leaves and woven into the hush of the trees. You lie their antlers, kissed by moonlight, coat warmed by the hush of night, and the ground does not resist you, it welcomes. So go ahead and close your eyes. Let the echoes of ancient footsteps and soft deer breath carry you. Let the story finish where words can't follow. And let the forest hold you for as long as you need.